So, Tim, are we getting an October event this year? Oh God, Tim, what's wrong? Are you okay? Like, what, you want to send out invites this week, or... Okay, is it gonna be a site refresh or a press release? What are you doing? Tim, what's going on? Why don't you want to say anything? We're midway through October. What's happening? Good Lord! That's enough of that, Tim. Let's move on to talking about iPad and Mac season. Craig, what's going on? Are you upset that you weren't in the last event at all? Well, true. I was just thinking, if I can't be in an event, then maybe we just shouldn't have events anymore, huh? How fair is that? Okay, are you gonna have site refreshes for the iPad and Mac then? Oh, true. I'm just so excited to tell you about how Stage Manager works so well on older iPads. Yes, I appreciate you listening to us on that, thank you. But the M2 iPad Pro is gonna have something you've never seen an iPad have before. Oh, really? Is it Final Cut? No. Oh, man, is it Xcode or? No. No, it isn't. Logic? Then what is it? Thanks to the power of the M2 chip, we're gonna put a calculator on the iPad, but older iPads won't be able to support it. Oh, you little... Stop right there. If you keep this up, the next generation Mac Pro is gonna look like the trash can and there will be no modularity. You are pure evil. I'm necessary evil. Oh God, let's begin. So, we've reached the second week of October, and there's still no invites going out. So, Mark Gurman is looking more and more likely to be right about the fact that Apple is just feeling all evented out this month, and is probably just going to be doing some site refreshes, especially now that Craig and Greg, who are high-end Apple employees that have done interviews in the past, have now scheduled for an evening interview with the Wall Street Journal on October 25th, with the topic not yet decided on. So, typically they do these kinds of interviews after they've had a big event, and the fact that there hasn't been an event announced, and in the last couple events Apple's had, they've announced them more than 1 week in advance. Maybe they go back to announcing the event 7 days before it happens, but that's not looking likely at this point, especially because at the last event they announced it 2 weeks in advance, and they like to have the media there and more in-person kind of hybrid virtual events. It's pretty likely that the Apple event is not gonna be a thing this month, but there's still a crap ton of stuff rumored to be launched within the next couple weeks. So today's video, I'm sure, will not age very well. However, I still think it's worth recapping everything that a lot of credible sources have come forward and said to expect. So for one, M2 iPad Pros, which are mostly just going to be, I think, spec upgrades. I really hope they don't software restrict anything to those, but other than the M2 chip coming to them, there's not really much else. It's like they might have some kind of wireless charging or MagSafe support on the back, or maybe it's just MagSafe 3 from a MacBook, which I really don't think matters. But yeah, they don't even plan on bringing mini LED to the 11-inch iPad Pro, so because it's such a minor refresh, this might be part of the reason that Apple doesn't necessarily want to have an event for it. It's fine if they just throw it up on the store one day. But the other bigger one that I definitely missed in my last October hardware video is the 10th generation iPad. In fact, there's already case manufacturers coming forward with case designs for a 10th generation iPad, which hasn't been released, but typically when you start seeing the case manufacturers releasing things, it means they have CAD files, they have the schematics, so I still think this is happening fairly soon, and it will probably be like a slightly uglier, scaled down version of the iPad Air 4, maybe with a non-laminated display, but it is, based on these schematics, not going to be rocking a home button anymore. It will probably have the squared off edge design, it'll have USB-C finally killing off Lightning again, it will have 5G, probably an A14 chip as well, so no Stage Manager coming to this iPad, but I'm gonna guess a little bit of a price hike because of the redesign. The cool thing though is it will work with the Magic Keyboard cases, it'll support Apple Pencil 2, and then we can finally kill off Apple Pencil 1 after 7 years, that's way too long, and probably incorporate Touch ID into the power buttons. So that alone I feel like could warrant having its own event, but yeah, it feels like there would have been an announcement by now if Apple was gonna have one. So 10th generation iPad, as exciting as it is, may just be thrown up on the store next week or the week after, depending on how Apple wants to release all of these products. But in terms of Mac, there's been a lot of evidence to suggest Apple's gonna drop updated versions of the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros. Pretty much no design changes, but just M2 Pro and M2 Max chips coming out, which, I don't know, I thought would have been fun to hear talk about on stage. But I guess maybe if they're just marginal spec improvements, then Apple doesn't really see a point in doing a whole event for it. I'm just hoping for some I/O improvements, like HDMI 2.1 coming to the MacBooks would be greatly appreciated, and also just MagSafe cables that can be color matched to the MacBook Pro you order. Why does the MacBook Air get that, but not the Pros? It's weird. But on top of that, I think what's far more interesting is there's been a lot of evidence to suggest Apple is working towards an M2 Pro Mac Mini, which I feel like the Mac Mini is an amazing product that a lot of people love, and it's gotten like no attention from Apple over the past 2 years. So M1 Mac Mini is great, but we'd love to see some performance enhancements brought to that Mac. So if in the next couple weeks we get an M2 Pro or just an M2 Mac Mini, I think a lot of people would appreciate it, especially if we can at least kill off the Intel Mac Mini from the website. That needs to go. But yeah, unfortunately, not much talk about a Mac Pro being unveiled or launched this year. That's probably being pushed off to wait for the 3nm architecture from TSMC, so probably expect that either in the spring or the summertime of next year. Apple's confirmed it exists. The Mac Pro and a redesigned Pro display is coming. It's just a matter of time, and I think that the chip that Apple wants to use in the Mac Pro is just not quite ready for mass production yet, so essentially they are limited by the technology of their time. But because the Mac Pro doesn't get refreshed annually, they don't want to rush the launch, because they're gonna drop the new Mac Pro probably next year, and it'll be insanely fast and really capable, and then they'll probably do nothing with it for a good 3 to 4 years. So you want to make sure there's a lot of overhead baked into that chip that's not going to become obsolete within 12 months. There's a chance of that happening if they tried to launch it this year with the 5nm or 4nm architecture, so I don't think Apple wants to take that risk. But all of those products could come within the next couple weeks, which is kind of exciting. Because there's still been a lot of things we got wrong this year, I'm gonna go ahead and guess something I said in today's video is gonna end up not happening. But since we're shifting Apple back into site refresh mode, just as a little reminder, occasionally Apple would drop hardware on the website without an event at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. in the morning. And yes, they will drop hardware on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, so it doesn't necessarily have to be at like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday for Apple to drop hardware, just as a reminder to everyone out there saying, no, there's no way it could be today. Really, it's hard to predict when Apple goes into site refresh mode. The biggest one I remember was back in March of 2019, where they didn't necessarily have an event, but like every day of the week they were dropping new hardware. Monday morning it was an iPad mini, and I think Tuesday morning they dropped new iMac refreshes and Mac updates, and then Wednesday morning they dropped new AirPods. So it could literally be like a bam 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 throughout the week, new hardware to talk about every single day. They might do all of the Mac stuff on one day and maybe all of the iPad stuff on a different day, but for sure Greg and Craig are probably going to be talking about iPadOS 16, macOS Ventura, which Gurman, who's a reliable source, has said that Apple is probably going to launch that in the last week of October, so just in time for all of the new hardware probably shipping at the end of this month. And maybe it's just all spec upgrades and that's why Apple didn't feel like having an event for it, but I don't know. I still feel like it would have made more sense from a marketing perspective to have an event. Even if the information itself was boring, you would get more eyes on it, it would get more views and more attention if you kind of hyped it up. So I'm holding out for a little bit of hope that we get an October event announcement on the 18th, and it's just one of those scenarios where they announce it a week before it happens. Maybe because it's all spec upgrades, they don't care if the media is going to be there or not, but I still really love the high production value and the countdowns and the structure and beauty of Apple's events. So site refreshes are kind of nice, but because they're so sporadic and we don't really know when they're going to be, for my own sanity and my own schedule, I kind of like having the events. So we'll see what happens. Feel free to let me know what you guys think is real and isn't real down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'll see you all in the next one.